Okay, we're back again here at allpointstv.com. And don't tell me that we're not the number one studio here in the Flint area, because I won't believe that. And those of us who are working here at the studio, we won't believe it either, even if it's true. We have a tendency not to believe things that we pick and choose what we believe, and we create our own fantasy world sometimes here at the studio. Okay, we're glad you're here, and that is not a fantasy that I created here. We are glad you're here, and hope you stay tuned for the next hour. We're going to try not to bore you and waste your time. By the way, as my time was wasted last night and also the night before, I don't think I'm going to continue to watch Mark Levine's program. I watched Mark Levine used to really talk about the Constitution. That was riveting my attention. I was just really impressed with the fact he would discuss the Constitution. He took the place in my mind. He took the place of Judge Napolitano, because Judge Napolitano had a program that came on. I think Napolitano's program came on 5 days a week, and it came on at 9 o'clock on Fox. And Fox, of course, was dumping everybody that made any sense in the program, so they got rid of him. I really enjoyed Napolitano's program, but Mark Levine, you started to, and I have a friend that watched your program also. We both agree you weren't on our nerve. you got to stop doing so much preaching and start and go back to your roots. Your roots were you were teaching a lot of things, and this preaching that you're doing right now, I don't think you're serving your cause that well. And so you were doing a lot of preaching this weekend, and I can tell you something. We're not going to sermonize this country into the condition needs to be in for it to be saved. We've got to raise some eyebrows in terms of the education that's ahead of us. We got an educational task ahead of us because, and we saw it at the convention this past week, the 4 days of last week, because people went to that convention. I wonder even today, and they've been gone now, leaving out Thursday after the program was over. So they had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and today is Monday. So the recovery has been 4 days now. Let's see if any of them have awakened to how they were railroaded for those 4 days they were in Chicago, because I wonder how many of them are aware of the fact that they went there to that convention not to make a choice. The choice had been made before they got there. And if you want to talk about putting the cart before the horse, that was a classic example of it, because what the convention was supposed to be about was to go there and have the delegates to stand up and cast their ballots based upon the state's verdict, and the delegates were to stand in front of the House delegation, not the delegates, the delegation, and announce how many of the votes that were being cast for the candidate based upon the primary. I don't think people notice that it's a fine distinction. I don't think people made a distinction in their thinking about the difference between delegates and the delegation. All of the state delegations were there, starting with Alabama, and then Alaska, and you go down all 50 states. All of them had delegations. But supposedly what was supposed to happen at that convention was that you're going to have the delegates, when the roll call is called about, you call Alaska, you call Alabama, and you call the rest of the states, and then they stand up and they would then make it official what the verdict was of the state vote that they represent. And so the delegates would stand up and say that we are very proud, it's kind of like the standard speech. We're very proud to cast this many votes. And it should have been Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden 50 times over. Now, there were a few other delegates, not maybe less than 1% otherwise, because some of the person that went there and voted during the state balloting would have voted for other candidates. But none of them voted for Kamala Harris. And at this point in time, when the primaries were being held, Walz was not even a thought, because Walz was not yet in the running to be the running mate or whomever was going to be the vice presidential candidate, because the idea was that Biden was going to run and Kamala Harris is going to be the vice president. So she didn't throw her hat in the ring, because that was the assumption in which the primaries were held. The status quo would be kept in place. But they showed a clip of that, that debate that occurred. And that clip they showed of that day in which Biden was stumbling all over the place, didn't know where he was, didn't know what he was saying. And after he finished his little talk, Donald Trump said he didn't know what he said. And he said, I don't know if he knows what he said. And that was riveting to the point beyond which nobody could deny that this person had a cognitive dissonance that was going to prohibit him from serving another term. Not that he served the first term. I mean, that was very clear to anybody who was paying any attention, that Biden was not really fit to serve the term they say he served from 2021 to 2024. The man was handicapped and everybody knew it. If you didn't know that, I can't believe the people that are saying the things they're saying or were saying at that time. I can't believe that they meant what they were saying. I mean, Morning Joe was saying that he was saying those of you who do not know and do not admit that Joe Biden is at the top of his game, he was saying F you on the air. He wasn't saying the words, he was saying F you on the air. And he was saying the man was sharp as a tack, and all of the things that we knew could not be. You can't present yourself in public the way Biden was doing and then go in private and all of a sudden the guy's a rocket science off camera. We would see some evidence of it once the cameras are rolling, and we were looking at him every time he came before the public trying to find his way off the stage. We saw the handicap up front and personal. And so it wasn't like they were not shocked now. Let's not go there. They were not surprised that Donald Trump won that, if you can call it a debate, won that debate, because he was really debating a mannequin. Biden didn't know what he was saying up there, and Biden hasn't known what he was saying for 4 years. That man has been up there getting lost everywhere he's been. I remember one case where he was in Europe in one of the summit meetings, and he had wandered off over here, and to cover for him, the delegation from the other countries, I think this is like a G7 conference. What they did was that they all moved over to the side where Biden was to cover up the man who just wandered off, hadn't forgotten what he was there for, forgot he was there for the meeting and wandered off, and they went over there to try to rescue it in front of the camera. So they moved the delegation over, very subtle, and then one of the members of, I think it might have been from the lady from either Germany or Britain, one of the two, went over and did what Obama did, quite frankly, when Obama was ushering Obama off stage at one time, took him around the shoulders and acted like it was like a hug of a person that they was close to, when we know that Obama and Biden were not very close. What he's really doing was guiding him off the stage so they wouldn't start wandering off and getting lost trying to get off the stage again. That's what they did over in Europe, and everybody was aware of it over there. This cognitive dissonance we were watching, the world was watching it as well. And that's why a lot of things that went on during that time period that went on, because they were not respectful of Biden, because they knew Biden didn't know what was going on. They're going to try to take advantage of this dissonance. This man was showing that everywhere he went, and it was unavoidable over there, and I know it's unavoidable over here, because every time the man came out in front of the public, everyone could see it. So at the convention, some things that were supposed to happen, once they had decided that Joe Biden was not going to be the nominee, and Joe Biden was the only one that had any quantity of delegates, because the others, it might have been one or two or three delegates out there among the others, among the states, various states, but it's less than 1%, because everybody was just going to endorse the president as the running partner of Kamala Harris. That ticket was going to be the ticket for the Democratic Party. Now, when that was changed out of some nudging that went on, because it wasn't like they went down there 2 or 3 times to the White House and it was a pleasant meeting. They kept going back because they were determined that Biden was going to have to leave after that debate was over. And Biden was reluctant to leave, because Biden thought he could do for another 4 years what he had done 4 years previous, but the cat was out of the bag. And even though he might have not even been cognitive even of that, they were cognitive of it, and they knew that they could not sell Biden another 4 years to the American people, and he had to leave, and they were going to press upon him that he was leaving, because it wasn't just about Biden. It was also about all the ones on that down ticket, and they're trying to retake the House, and they're trying to maintain the majority in the Senate. And if you got a person that's that weak at the top of the ticket, that hurts the down players as well, and that's about them. And they're not going to tolerate Biden being up there, and then it comes down to reflect upon their own candidacies, because as you know, the entire House of Representatives is elected every 2 years, and then 1/3 of the senators are elected every 2 years. 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election. So they had some skin in the game, and they wanted Biden to know that they had their skin in the game, and it was beyond the reach of the president at this point to save anybody, because the president cannot save himself in running for re-election, because he had been exposed in the debates that he couldn't save anybody else on the ticket, and really was in that case, therefore, a liability to the other players. So they went to the White House, and you notice about 3 times, because they were coming away with a dissatisfaction of the answer they were getting. But they were going to go back until they got the right answer. And the right answer was that Biden had to step down. And that's what the continuous going back to the White House was about. I guess what they had to do each time they went back to, not being in the room, of course, and not being cognizant of the conversation. I bet they went there each time to sweeten the path for the vacation of the office. So that means that what then? Money would have been involved, and also certain guarantees. I don't think you have to even have any guarantees about his son or the impeachment of Biden, any of those things, because The Democratic Party has already shown its cards in that domain, because they've shown it when it came up to the impeachment of Mayorkas. Mayorkas was impeached by the House of Representatives. And then what happens? What I've been telling you, that I've been telling you how the impeachment process operates, and the way it operates, the way it is set up to operate. I said before that every time a person has been impeached, the impeachment, for example, in the case of the federal office, the federal court members, the federal court, we've had 15 judges on the federal courts that have been impeached. And every time there's been an impeachment, we've had the impeachment in 3 different instances of presidents. Andrew Johnson brought to trial in 1868. We had Clinton impeached, brought to trial in the 90s. And then, how did this happen? Twice. Trump impeached twice. And each time a trial occurred after the impeachment, based on the impeachment charge. I have been saying that you can impeach a ham sandwich, but you cannot take the person out of office based upon the impeachment of a ham sandwich. There's a difference in terms of impeachment. You can impeach a president or a vice president or a civil officer of the United States for anything. But you cannot remove them from office based upon just any impeachment charge. Because here's the deal. Impeachment is not just to serve the ends of removal. Impeachment is could also be used, and it wasn't used this way until Mayorkas. But impeachment can be used to show Congress's displeasure, as a way of getting the president to understand that he must in fact correct some things, because if he does not, then there could be another impeachment that would bring about a much more serious consequence. It could be a warning shot fired, so to speak. Now, when they impeach Mayorkas, they already have shown their hand, because they impeached Mayorkas with the idea that Mayorkas was the man has allowed all of the borders to be violated, the southern border, now the northern border is out of control. And they were impeaching Mayorkas, the idea of him going to trial and having to answer for the charges that were based upon dismissal that comes out of Article 2, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. Article 2, Section 4 says the president, the vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office. But it doesn't say shall be removed from office upon impeachment. It says shall be removed from office for impeachment upon impeachment for and conviction of, and then it gives you the layout. Treason. And I think the whole administration, quite frankly, should be a charge for all of them, quite frankly, in that administration. Because they've allowed an invasion of this country. And if you think this is a peaceful invasion, just wait. In fact, you don't have to wait so long for it because you already see what they're doing. People are dying. People are being murdered in this country by these illegal immigrants. Somebody told me yesterday that Venezuela, the gangs from Venezuela are running people out of their houses in some states. So Mayorkas, the charges against Mayorkas would have been interesting to see how those charges played out, but it never went to trial because in the Senate, the Democratic Party has majority, and Charles Schumer decided to head him off at the pass and wouldn't even let it come to the floor for a verdict regarding a trial. Of course, as I said in my post during that time period, that's certainly within the constitutional parameters allowed to the Senate. The Senate can decide whether it's going to hear the allegations or not. There's nothing that prohibits them from doing that. And they cannot be commanded to do it by the House because the two bodies are separate from each other. You could tell that by Article 1, Section 5, Clause. Don't tell me Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2. You know, where they set up that each of the branches of the Congress sets up the terms for its own members to be brought to heel based upon what happens to the members that are in the Senate and the members in the House of Representatives. They're not tried under the impeachment clauses in the Constitution because they don't fall under the auspices of what is in fact designated for them to be brought upon charges of impeachment. It says members of the president, the vice president, and all civil officers of the United States. The civil officers are not the members of the House and Senate. Those are elected officers. They are elected officers of the districts in the state, and they also elect the officers of the states themselves, as it was supposed to have been if they're not messed with it and tampered with it in 1913, which they did because they did not realize what they were doing. Quite frankly, I'm not going to pray for them. Father, forgive them for they knew not what they're doing. They shouldn't be that dumb in the halls of Congress. But they didn't know what they were doing in 1913 when they made the popular election of the senators. They didn't know why they were given 6 6-year terms, which is 2 years beyond the term served by the president. And what was that? What was that about? James Madison. What was that about? That was about the states asserting their power. The states asserting their authority. 2 years for the members of the House, 4 years for members of for the president. But look at this: 6 years for the senators, because the senators were to be the representatives of the states. And we fail to understand that when we talk about the separation of powers. We have to talk about the separation of powers, not only horizontal, but a vertical separation of powers was intended. And we don't realize that what they did in 1913 was neutered the states, where the state's voice has been neutered today That's why the federal government is out of control totally, because the check that was determined to be their check and balance upon the federal government was to be the senators. That's why they're there for 6 years. 2 years beyond the president, giving them more tenure in the Senate because of what they represented. The states were being represented. They wanted their power asserted in the Senate, and they changed it in 1913. Didn't know what they were doing, and they're changing. If they had known what they were doing, by the way, I would say this on the QTN running. If they had known what they were doing, what they should have done in the aftermath of having changed the way in which we elect senators, they should also have then declared, since we elect in the same way we elect members of the House of Representatives, we would therefore change the term, because the term was there for a set reason. Did they understand the fact that the 6-year term was because of the fact that they're sitting there as the watchdogs on behalf of the states, overlooking the federal government and what it did to make sure they don't go out of control, because they were to be checked by the senators on behalf of the states, and they set a term for them to be able to do that. They're not turned out at the same time that you turn out members of the House. But now that you change that, and you change the relationship to the federal government, because they just elected the same way as the members of the House were elected today. Therefore, if they had known what they were doing, they would have therefore gone and changed the number of years they served in the senatorial position. And it should no longer enjoy the 6-year term. It should be a 2-year term, because they changed the condition in which the terms were in fact to be asserted for a 6-year term. Once they change that, the terms got to be changed, or should, to be consistent. Why would you have a 6-year senator elected by the people in the state and have the members of the House elected to a 2-year term, elected by the members of the state, the districts, of course, but still by the members of the state? If you're going to have both of them elected by the members of the state, why would you have one 2-year and one 6-year? Tell me how that makes any sense. If you change one, you therefore, knowing what you're doing, you change the other, but they didn't know what they were doing. I can tell that by the fact that the 6-year term stayed as it was. They changed the 6-year, they changed the way in which we elect the senators, kept the 6-year term, which is a contradiction in my view, is a contradiction. Nobody is saying that, but I'll tell you this: they're not on this level. None of them are. I know you're gonna say, "Well, this did you go to Stanford?" No. Did you go to Harvard? No. I tell you where I went. I went to Eastern. But I went to class, and then after class over, I went to the library, because I didn't want anybody in there touching me. And you'd be surprised what they said, and you'd be surprised what those authorities were saying. I didn't leave. I didn't have to apologize for being there. And those professors, if they're still there, which I doubt, I don't know if they would say this, but I had the feeling when I was there that they knew they'd never seen anything like this before. And that's been a number of my experiences at these different universities, including my undergraduate school. Being thrown out of classes for being smart aleck. When I wasn't being smart aleck, I was I was leaving out because I had finished out what they had given as a test, and I was going to do some other study for the exams. And I would, sometimes that would create a problem. But I never thought I could be contained in the classroom, to be honest with you. I've, I have not met the classroom where I felt I could be contained in that classroom academically. I never felt that way. And I've been to all the major universities. The only one, I don't. If you say major universities, what are you saying there? You're saying I have not taken the classes at Central. What other university would I say would be a major university? I can't say there are any others that I've not attended because I attended Michigan State, University of Michigan, Wayne State University, and I'm a graduate, two-time graduate of Wayne of Eastern. And I will tell you something. At every place where I've been, I think at Wayne State when I was there at Wayne State, this was in 1967, I think. The year of the riot. That I can recall it based on that. The year they had the riot in Detroit, and I was in this large class. I think they had about 100 students in that class, and when I passed my test, my final exam in, what the teacher was doing, because they didn't learn your names, but they knew your test scores. They knew if you were at the top of your class. I was number 2 in that class. They knew your test scores, and so when I passed my test in, the guy came up to see who I was, and I passed my test in, had my name on it, and he looked up to see who I was. I could tell that he knew that he associated that name with those with those test scores, because they would not give me anything in those classrooms that I went there with the idea that I'm gonna be embarrassed when I leave out of there. I know I felt that way in the class I've been in, and so anyway, I'm just letting you see that I don't take a back seat to these scholars out here, and they know I'm out here. They know I'm out here because I've called them out too many different times on the networks that they're on, and now that I know I'm on those networks now with them, and I'm still calling them out, and they don't say anything. They don't even acknowledge that I said anything. I call them out. I call them out all the time because I know they don't know this area better than I know it, and I know they don't have the training that I have. That I know. And I know it from a number of vantage points, but I know it from what I hear them talk about on TV. I call them television scholars. But anyway, they did demonstrate what I said the impeachment process could involve, which it never involved this before. But you don't have to take the matter to the Senate for trial. And if it's taken to the Senate for trial, the trial does not have to be held just because it's been taken there by the members of the House. Nobody's ever said that before, but that's as true as it can be. We have to get back to what the Constitution says in this country, and we don't want to do that because we think the Constitution is what the Supreme Court members say it is. That's not what the Constitution is. The Constitution is what it says in writing. The Supreme Court is supposed to be interpreting the document. They're not doing that either. But they didn't have to go back to Biden and tell Biden that they were going to make sure that they had his back, because Biden should have been impeached and removed from office a long time ago, quite frankly, because this man is involved in treason. There's no doubt about that. This country's been sold Burisma in Ukraine, And all those dollars that are going out of the treasury to Ukraine, that's going to be stopped, by the way, under Donald Trump, because Donald Trump doesn't owe anything to Ukraine. There's no baggage out to Zelensky. But this president owes to Ukraine because Ukraine has been divvying money back to the crime family. That's what the Biden family is, by the way, the Biden crime family. Mr. Crime family. This is a Cosa Nostra operation. Go read, I use the word Cosa Nostra because I read Joe Valachi's book. The Valachi Papers. That's a very good book, by the way. But if the impeachment process operated the way it's supposed to operate, and that is to maintain a check and balance on power from the vertical level, because the authority was placed in the hands of the Senate to do that work. That's what the framers had in mind, and they took it out of the mind of the framers, put it in the minds of their lessers in the Congress in 1913, and that never should happen, because there have been no persons in the House and in the Senate, nor on the Supreme Court, that can touch the framers of this country. None of them are on that level. That's just a fact. None of them are. Was it Stephen Birmingham wrote the book called The Best and Brightest? None of them are on the level of the framers. And they come behind the framers and try to alter what the framers did. That in and of itself is a travesty. Because if you're not on the level of the framers, you wouldn't understand what the framers were in fact doing, particularly if you're not studied this. I was listening to a person I have a lot of respect for. He's deceased now, but I had a lot of respect for Shelby Foote. Shelby Foote had only gone to college for 2 years. He went to North Carolina. He went to UNC, University of North Carolina, and stayed there 2 years, dropped out. He was a novelist, and he's the person that took something very different to when he began to write a history of, he got interested in history and was writing books on the Civil War. His 3-volume work on the Civil War is really must reading. And as a novelist, he brought his novelist writing into that, and it's just so fluently. I mean, you just can't. The man was a genius. Let's put it that way. And he was saying, I was listening to him, a video of him. I was looking for something else. I came across Shelby Foote, and I knew I had to stop and listen to what he was saying. No, Shelby Foote died in 2005. But anytime he's one of those Merrill Lynch kind of persons. You know, when he speaks, people stop and listen, or should. So I was running through a lot of videos on YouTube, and his video popped up. I had to stop him and pay attention to it. And he was talking about one of the persons that inspired his writing. He was talking about William Faulkner. And he said that Faulkner was turning in his writing, and the editors would come back and they would have changed something they wrote, maybe a comma or something that they added to it, and he passed something else in, and they come back trying to correct Faulkner now. He said that Faulkner wrote a couple of times, said, after they corrected him a couple of times, he wrote them the third time and said, "Leave my work alone, damn it." because they're not on that level to be challenging what Faulkner was writing. Leave my work alone and understand that this is on this level and not on that level. Shut up. And that's what that a lot of that is what I'm sure Shelby Foote felt that way, because Shelby Foote was, one of the things about Shelby Foote that makes his writing so interesting is that he's not just writing it from the outside. He was in Mississippi. They asked him, I get back to my subject, they asked him some time ago, this is before he died, they asked him if he had lived during that time period, the time period which he was writing about, what side would he have been fighting on? And Shelby Foote said he would have been fighting on the side of his people, meaning on the side of the South. But he would not have been fighting for slavery. He'd been fighting for states' rights. Which is what this war was really about. This war was not over slavery. This war was over the right to succeed from the Union. And you historians are not saying that. I'm telling you this. What you're saying in your classrooms, you can say it in your classrooms. I dare you to say it here. You're not going to say it here. Don't come here with that, because that doesn't fly here and you can't prove it. You cannot. You don't have to prove it in the classroom, but you have to prove it here, because you have to show me the documents, and I can show you the documents I have, and you show the ones you have, and we'll see what you want to prevail. You cannot prove that. You cannot prove this war was over slavery. You say that in all the classrooms, and I've challenged it everywhere I've been in the 4 larger universities that I've been at in this state, because that does not fly based upon the evidence. And once you raise it in those classrooms, it goes unchallenged from that point, because you can give them dates that show that's not true. And also with the documents. Let's say the document, the Emancipation Proclamation, what the document does, to read it and understand what it says. Anyway, I wanted to say that there are some people, and Faulkner was certainly one of them. There are some people when they write, to come behind them and try to alter it is really quite an insult, quite frankly. And to come behind the framers, as they did in 1913, as they done on numerous occasions, to come behind the framers and do anything that goes into the original document, which is the first 7 articles of the Constitution, and to alter that, that's an insult to the framers. Because you cannot, and I'm saying this, is that you cannot alter the 7 articles, anything in the 7 articles. Because that's the original Constitution. I don't have to ask for any approval on this. But it's gone under the radar because people do not understand those are the terms in which the Union was brought together. That's why you cannot retroactively go back and change that, because that was the terms that brought the 13 states into an alliance with each other, without which they would never align themselves with each other. The reason why you can pass an amendment, listen to this very carefully. The reason why you can add an amendment to the Constitution that outlaws slavery in the country is because slavery was never mentioned in the Constitution of the United States. the framers were too ashamed of the institution to mention it. And that's why they said what they said in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, when you're talking about, and that is, by the way, the apportionment clause of the first article of the Constitution. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 is the apportionment clause, where they were trying to determine how they're going to determine the apportionment for each of the states. And when they got to the area, the real fight that was going on is how you're going to count those that were enslaved in those 15 states. At that point, in the 13 states, I mean, slavery had not been outlawed at that point in any of the states on a national level at that point. Some states had done it as individual states, had done that. But in terms of the national prohibition against slavery, that was not until after the war had been won. The 13th Amendment was passed in 1865. But the reason why that can be added to the Constitution as a amendment is because slavery was recognized as an institution, but listen carefully, it was never institutionalized in the Constitution of the United States because it was never mentioned as an institution in the document. That's why the 13th Amendment is not unconstitutional. Go read Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, the apportionment clause, where it's talking about how you're going to allocate the members in the House of Representatives is based upon the population of the states. And they said, we're going to count this population, we're going to count that population. And then it got to the slaves and said, and 2/3 of the others they're in. Not going to count the Native Americans who were not taxed. Now, one person listen to this very carefully here, because there are people saying today that these illegal aliens can be counted as part of the apportionment. In other words, they're saying that they're meeting us halfway with this claim that they should not be allowed to vote, because how you get non-citizens to vote in our elections? So they say, well, not that they're not voting in our elections, they are voting in our elections. But they're saying that they should be counted in terms of the way we apportion the electoral votes of the states. Well, how can that be when they're saying something very different about the apportionment in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3? Any of you scholars thought about that? It's clear that the framers were talking about the apportionment based upon citizenship. And you not only know that by Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, but you also know about the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States. Now, you can say what you say about that. You can say that the child comes here, born on the soil of the United States automatically becomes a citizen of the United States. You can say that, you can't prove it, because that's not what the document says. You can talk that I think the slang the kids would say, you can talk that smack. That's the slang part of it. A lot of people are talking a lot of smack, as they say. And the Supreme Court is too. Go read the 14th Amendment and come back and tell me that you can come over here on a plane right before you give birth, drop a child down the country, and that child automatically becomes a president of the United States. Go read the 14th Amendment and come back and talk to me about that. You can't prove it because it's not true, and you made that up too. Just like you're making this other stuff up. This immunity stuff. So you could have a lot of persons doing a lot of things here, but until you know what should have happened, you would not even know. They pulled the wool over your eyes, and they did not know what they did at the Constitution at this Democratic Party convention, because they didn't know what the protocols were that's supposed to have happened. You can't pass those delegates off to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris ran for president in 2020 and didn't get a single delegate even at that point in time. She has yet to earn a delegate vote even to this day. Yes, she's running for president of the United States. What a travesty this is. She quit before the Iowa caucus was held in 2020 because she was not getting any support, and she dropped out of the race prior to that caucus being held in Iowa. So she didn't have any delegates at that point from that. In 2020, she didn't have any delegates. And because she thought, and everybody thought, I had written about it, I thought that Biden was going to be the candidate. I knew they couldn't force him off based upon anything that was constitutional and also anything that was legal, because legally they could not force Biden to stand down. They shouldn't have run him in the first place. They knew he was decrepit at that point. They knew that. But they ran him anyway, and you cannot do what the left always wants to do. They want to make a decision, and then if they don't like the decision, change it. You cannot make these claims and then say that because you made the claim, therefore it's authenticated by the fact the claim is made. What does the document say that in fact governs that? The Constitution does not allow automatic citizenship in this country. A person becomes a citizen of this country based upon two requirements. Birth and naturalization, by soil and
just sanguineous.
Sanguineous, yeah. That's right. By blood. And just solely by soil. And they're saying that you can just come in here and have a child, and a child that is born here on the soil. This Constitution allows for that. That's saying. The scholars are saying that. One of the arguments and Wayne State was that could happen. They did not. I'll say this about Easton. Easton had a very good handle on the Constitution. They had an argument. That was an argument I heard at Wayne State University. I was there for a summer, and that argument you can make that argument. You can't make it based upon the Constitution. The Constitution does not allow that. And there are people that make these claims. They need to be challenged on it, because you see, if you never know in those classes who's going to come out. Well, nobody. I don't think anybody come out of Eastern and became a member of the Supreme Court. But when you're in those classrooms, you have. Well, what they do. Let's be honest about this. What they do at the university level is that they pick and choose. They make those universities important based upon where the government goes to get its people from. And there are certain universities, the Ivy League university. I don't think they do too much of Brown. Brown is the Ivy League university, top university. I don't think they're. I mean, AOC comes. I mean, I don't think there's anybody on the Supreme Court that comes out of Brown. I don't think I read where any of them have gotten their Juris Doctorate from Brown University. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. I'll go back and check that again. But I don't recall looking over these resumes any Brown University graduates on the Supreme Court. They like Harvard. And Yale is up there. Cornell, Yale is up there for sure. But they like Harvard. So Harvard gets a credit because the government pulls from there. In the department, that's pretty much Columbia, or used to be. And I know when I was in my high school, they had our district would choose student teachers from Central Michigan. I guess they had graduated from Central Michigan. They had that, so that they chose a lot. They would have them come down and do student teaching, and they would always choose them to join the staff, at least at that time period. So that's how they make these schools prominent. But I'm not scared of anybody from Harvard University in terms of the constitutional language and what the dogma requires. Anyway, they surprised a lot of people when they got to the Senate, and Charles Schumer said no, that we're not even going to hear the impeachment charge against Mayorkas, because they refused to hear the allegations. I guess they like the alligators. And they can do that by the Constitution, because nothing mandates that they have to have the trial. But if you're going to dismiss on the charges, you got to make sure that there are specific charges raised that are constitutionally allowed for the removal. That's what the Constitution is doing in the impeachment process. It's mandating how you remove. And if you remove, those are mandatory charges on removal. But there are no mandatory charges on the impeachment. You scholars agree with that? There are no mandatory charges on the impeachment. Now, when you say, as Alan Dershowitz has said, that you have to impeach based upon treason, bribery, other high crimes and misdemeanors, I'm telling you right now, that man doesn't have any training in the Constitution to say that. You cannot say that and have training. But anyway, a lot of people went to this convention this past week. I wonder if even today, if they are aware that they were railroaded there. They went there to rubber stamp what had already been agreed to. They didn't make any decisions there about the platform. They didn't make any decision. They went there to holler. And they did that for 4 days, cheering this speaker, cheering that speaker. And when Kamala gave a 30-minute speech, they were cheering what she was talking about. She didn't say anything either. But she said it better than Biden could have said it. So they were cheering the fact she got through the speech. They put the cart before the horse and got away with it. Because we do not know what's required by law in this country. Until we learn that, we're going to continue to be railroaded. Okay, we got to get out of here, but I want you to be aware that last week was a travesty in this country, and there are so many things that we need to know as we go toward November, because we don't get it right now, folks. If we don't get this right in terms of this election, I can tell you right now, unequivocally, that's all she wrote. This experiment is over. 4 more years of what we had, this country is going to collapse. And it may even collapse even if that doesn't happen. But I know it's going to happen if we get Kamala in there. Okay, that's enough ranting for the day. I just want you to be aware of how the stakes are very high in this election. Okay, until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.